Hello and welcome. Our top focus remains on protests in Kenya against tax hikes proposed by the William Ruto government. Angry protesters who are demanding the tax hikes to be scrapped have set an ultimatum for Kenyan President Ruto. They want President Ruto to respond to their demands publicly. This after President William Ruto said that he was ready for a conversation with thousands of peaceful young protesters and called them to the negotiating table.
I am very proud of our young people. They have stepped forward tribeless. They have stepped forward peaceful. And I want to tell them we are going to engage them. We are going to have a conversation so that together we can build a greater nation.
The mounting anger is targeting Ruto directly. Many young protesters resorted to heckle the president while he was attending a church ceremony on Sunday. Protesters were seen marching toward the venue and chanting slogans. They also blocked some of the vehicles. Ruto was whisked away by his security team when they realized that the protesters were there to confront him. The protesters are opposing the new tax hikes in the Finance Bill 2024 that has been tabled in Parliament. As the protests caught the Ruto government off guard, it decided to roll back some of the proposed tax increases last week. However, the protesters want the bill to be scrapped altogether. The Parliament is scheduled to convene on Tuesday to debate and vote over the bill, and the protesters have called for a national strike on the same day. The protests are largely led by young Kenyans who have used social media to live stream and coordinate the demonstrations. Though the protests largely remain peaceful initially, they have now taken a deadly turn, with at least 2 deaths reported. A 21-year-old was reportedly killed as he was hit by a tear gas canister. An investigation is also underway into the allegations that a 29-year-old died after he was shot by a police officer.
If someone is fighting for their rights, why use live bullets? If he would have been found with any weapons, we would have said he is undisciplined, but he was walking with his friend.
While Amnesty International Kenya says many protest organizers, content creators and medics have been profiled, abducted and detained, the ongoing protests are a big blow for President William Ruto's administration, which seeks to raise around $2.7 billion with the tax hikes. Now, the government argues the hikes are necessary for filling the state coffers and reducing external debt. After the government agreed to scrap some of the proposed levies, including on bread, car ownership and financial and mobile services, Kenya's National Treasury has warned of a budget shortfall of around $1.56 billion. To fill the void, the government is now targeting an increase in fuel prices and export taxes. However, critics fear that the move will exacerbate the cost of living crisis and further add to Kenya's expenses amidst high inflation. Now, for more on this, we have with us communication and political strategist Mark Bachi, who is joining us live from Nairobi. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, President Ruto wants to sit down with peaceful protesters to talk, but the protest groups say that he must talk publicly. Can the mounting anger force President Ruto to give in to the demands that have been made by the protesters?
Well, first and foremost, we must understand that these protests do not have particular leaders. There's no single person you can sit with and say that you've negotiated with the demonstrators. The demonstrators are coordinating themselves on social media. Many of the people who you could say are ringleaders or most influential in this particular movement are either anonymous or they don't actually hold any sway in terms of convincing their fellow demonstrators to actually stand down. Number two is that these particular demonstrations have actually seen an escalation in the sense that they're not just calling for the removal of these taxes that they're calling punitive and unfair, but they're also calling for the removal of the president himself. So this is changing, and it's very difficult really to convince them to put their protests arms down. But on the same note, it must be remembered that what they're calling for in terms of scrapping the entire finance bill is quite a difficult thing to do, given how long it takes to actually constitutionally constitute a bill such as the finance bill that we are looking at. So the president is caught between a rock and a hard place. It is not easy to navigate these waters. There is no particular leader to talk to in terms of getting these things done, and in terms of speaking to them publicly.
Right.
It is interesting to note that for the last 2 days they have been talking publicly on social media, and they have been
Right.
addressing the president on social media.
And what happens if the Ruto government does not meet the protesters' demands? Kenya is already under economic distress. Can the Ruto government afford to add major challenge to its list of problems?
Well, it's going to be very interesting for the Ruto government. Remember that the budget had increased by another about $30 million, thereabout. Sorry, $33 billion. I misspeak there. And there is an opportunity to actually reduce these costs. The budget's about $3 billion. There's an opportunity to reduce those costs to something that is more manageable. So it is not impossible for the government to wiggle its way economically out of the problems that it has. It's just the matter of that the budget that they had wished for is now well gone, unless they're willing to face the wrath of these young people who I do not personally see standing down if that bill is passed. Indeed, until it is scrapped and redone, these young people will continue demonstrating across the country, and therefore the president is caught between the hardship of protesters and the difficulty of changing his budget.
Right. Mark, Ruto's government is looking to raise $2.7 billion in taxes to reduce debt. Will these proposed tax hikes be effective in achieving this goal?
That's actually the million-dollar question, because many pundits and many economists are saying that it is not possible anymore to tax Kenyans even more than they've already been taxed, terming these taxes as extremely expensive, extremely punitive, and the taxes that were put in last year have not raised as much funds as they had hoped to raise. And many Kenyans are saying that they are already so broke that if they're taxed anymore, they would not be able to meet these demands. At the same time, they're saying that instead of taxing the Kenyans, more Kenyans are asking for President William Ruto to reduce the costs of, for example, running State House, running the the office of the First Lady, running the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and that of his spouse. So they're talking, the Kenyans are talking about austerity measures and pushing back against higher taxes, saying that if the leaders are living in largesse, then really they need more taxes. The president is pushing back and saying that everything that he has done to the effect of reducing the national debt, while at the same time being able to manage what the fiscal demands of the country is.
Mark, thank you very much for your time and for being with us on First Post Africa.
most welcome.